I never thought I'd be sitting here, talking to you about quitting smoking. For 40 years, 4 decades, cigarettes were my constant companion. From my morning coffee to that last puff before bed, smoking was woven into the fabric of my life. My name's Margaret, and at 67, I finally did what 3 doctors, 7 grandchildren, and my late husband couldn't convince me to do. I quit smoking after 40 years. And let me tell you something surprising. The benefits went far beyond what I expected. This isn't just another lecture about lung health. This is my story, raw, real, and sometimes embarrassing, about what actually happens when you break free from a lifetime addiction. I took my first puff at 15, behind the school gymnasium. By 17, I was buying my own packs. By 25, I was up to a pack a day. Smoking wasn't just something I did, it became part of my identity. I was that mom who stepped outside during soccer games, that grandmother who had to pause bedtime stories to have a quick smoke on the porch. I was the coworker always first to take a break, rain or shine. I could tell you the price of cigarettes in 3 different states, and which gas stations had the best deals. My husband quit when our first grandchild was born. I want to see them graduate, he said. I nodded, promised I'd try, and then snuck out to the garage later that night. When he passed away 5 years ago from heart issues, not lung cancer, ironically, I was still smoking. At his funeral, I stepped away from the service twice to light up. That's addiction for you. I tried quitting 7 times. Patches, gum, hypnosis, cold turkey, you name it, I tried it. Each attempt ended the same way, back at the convenience store, feeling defeated, buying that familiar pack. My turning point wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a cancer diagnosis or an emergency room visit. It was something much simpler, much more ordinary. My youngest granddaughter, Emma, was staying overnight. She's 8, curious about everything. While I was tucking her in, she looked up at me and said, "Grandma, why do you smell different from other grandmas?" That question. It hit me harder than any medical warning ever had. I mumbled something about perfume, but later that night, I went into the bathroom and really smelled my clothes, my hair. For the first time in decades, I noticed what others had been experiencing. That stale, ashy smell had become my signature scent, and an 8-year-old had called me out on it. The next morning, I didn't reach for my cigarettes. Not because I had planned to quit, but because I couldn't stop thinking about Emma's question. One day became 2, became 3. It was brutal, I won't sugarcoat that, but somehow that innocent question kept me going when the cravings hit. The first changes weren't what I expected. Everyone talks about improved lung function, reduced cancer risk, the big medical benefits. But what actually kept me going those first few weeks were the smaller, daily changes. By day 3, food started tasting different. I've been cooking the same spaghetti sauce recipe for 30 years, but suddenly it was like I was tasting it for the first time. The subtle flavors, the richness of the tomatoes, the sharpness of the garlic, it was all magnified. By the end of week 1, I noticed my morning cough was less severe. I'd been coughing every morning for so long that I barely registered it anymore. It was just part of waking up, like stretching or yawning. But that harsh, hacking cough began to soften, then shorten, then some mornings it wasn't there at all. 2 weeks in, my daughter hugged me and said, "Mom, your hair smells nice." Such a simple comment, but I nearly cried right there in her kitchen. I hadn't told anyone I was quitting. I'd failed too many times before, but she noticed anyway. By week 3, I realized I was sleeping through the night. For years, I'd wake up around 3 a.m., my body craving nicotine. I'd either lie there, fighting the urge, or give in and go have a cigarette in the dark kitchen. But suddenly, I was waking up with the sun, actually feeling rested. The money surprised me too. I'd been spending nearly $3,000 a year on cigarettes. I started putting my cigarette money in a jar, $10 a day that would have gone up in smoke. By the end of the first month, there was over $300 in that jar. I used it to buy Emma a new bicycle. Around the 2-month mark, the physical changes became impossible to ignore. My skin, I've always been self-conscious about the lines around my mouth and eyes. Smoking accelerates aging, that's no secret. But after 2 months without cigarettes, I noticed my complexion had more color, more life. The deep lines around my mouth began to soften. My lips weren't as dry and cracked. Then there was my breathing. For years, I'd been the grandmother who couldn't keep up. Walking through the mall with my grandkids, I'd find excuses to sit down, catch my breath. Climbing the stairs to their bedrooms, for story time left me. Winded and hiding it poorly. 3 months after quitting, my youngest son invited me on a hike. Normally, I'd find an excuse. Too hot, wrong shoes, bad back. This time, I said yes. We walked for 2 miles through gentle hills, and while I wasn't setting any speed records, I wasn't stopping every 5 minutes either. When we reached a small overlook, I took a deep breath, a really deep breath, and realized I couldn't remember the last time my lungs had filled so completely. My doctor confirmed what I was feeling at my checkup. My blood pressure had dropped from borderline high to normal range. My resting heart rate had decreased. My lung capacity had already improved by 15%, and she said it would continue to get better. Your body is healing itself, she told me. Every day without cigarettes is a day your lungs are repairing damage. The physical benefits were wonderful, but the emotional transformation, that was the real surprise. For decades, cigarettes had been my coping mechanism. Stressed. Have a smoke. Happy. Celebrate with a cigarette. Bored. Light up to pass the time. Angry. Step outside and puff away the frustration. Without that crutch, I had to learn new ways to handle emotions I'd been numbing for years. Sometimes, it was overwhelming, feeling everything so intensely, without that familiar ritual to dull the edges. I started walking when I felt anxious. Just simple walks around the neighborhood. At first, it was just to distract myself from cravings, but it evolved into something more meaningful. I began noticing things: the changing leaves, the neighborhood gardens, the sound of birds. Small pleasures that cigarettes had muted somehow. The guilt lifted too. I hadn't realized how much shame I carried about smoking, hiding it from new acquaintances, making excuses to step away from family gatherings, lying to doctors about how much I actually smoked. That constant, low-grade guilt had been my companion for years, and its absence felt like putting down a heavy backpack I'd forgotten I was carrying. Perhaps most surprisingly, I found myself more present in conversations. Without constantly thinking about when I could step away for my next cigarette, I was actually listening, engaging, connecting in ways I hadn't for years. 6 months in, the social shifts became apparent. Friendships changed. Some of my smoking buddies drifted away, not from deliberate distance, but because our main connection point had disappeared. Those quick conversations over. Cigarettes outside restaurants or at parties had been the foundation of some relationships, and without that shared ritual, we struggled to connect. But other relationships deepened. My non-smoking friends invited me to activities I'd always avoided. Yoga classes, longer hikes, indoor concerts where you couldn't step out for a smoke break. My world expanded as my limitations fell away. My relationship with my grandchildren transformed completely. I could sit through an entire movie without stepping out. I could play tag in the backyard without getting winded after 2 minutes. I wasn't constantly checking the time, calculating when I could sneak away for a cigarette. And the hugs, they hugged me more. Children are honest about these things. They notice smells, they react instinctively. Without realizing it, I think they had been holding back, keeping their distance from that smoky smell. Now they'd fling themselves into my arms without hesitation. My daughter noticed too. "Mom," she said one evening, "the kids talk about you differently now." They're excited to come over. That simple observation meant more to me than any health statistic ever could. I wish I could tell you it was all positive changes and steady improvement, but that wouldn't be honest. There were unexpected challenges that no one had warned me about. Weight gain was real. Without cigarettes suppressing my appetite and boosting my metabolism, I gained 15 pounds in the first 6 months. My clothes felt tight, my energy dipped. For a while, I questioned if it was worth it, trading one health issue for another. But my doctor helped me understand that the weight gain was manageable, while the damage from cigarettes wasn't. I started making small changes, more vegetables, shorter walks that gradually got longer. The weight stabilized, and some eventually came off. But I had to accept that my body was finding a new normal. Sleep disruption surprised me too. After that initial improvement, I went through a phase of insomnia around month 4. My doctor explained that nicotine affects sleep architecture, and my brain was still adjusting to its absence. Temporary, but challenging. And then there were the unexpected emotional triggers. 6 months after quitting, I drove past the convenience store where I'd bought my cigarettes for years. The owner used to have my brand waiting on the counter when he saw my car pull up. Without planning to, I turned into the parking lot, walked in, and almost asked for a pack out of pure muscle memory. I bought a bottle of water instead, my hands shaking as I paid. These setbacks weren't failures, they were part of the healing process. Each one taught me something about how deeply smoking had been woven into my life, and each one I overcame made me stronger in my resolve. As my 1-year anniversary of quitting approached, I began reflecting on all the changes, expected and unexpected. Physically, I was transformed. My lung capacity had increased dramatically. The persistent cough was gone completely. My sense of smell had become almost comically sensitive. I could tell what my neighbor was cooking from my front porch. My skin looked years younger, and those deep lines around my mouth had softened considerably. Financially, my cigarette jar had accumulated over $3,600, money that would have literally gone up in smoke. I used part of it to take my grandchildren to a water park, something I would have avoided before because of the walking, the heat, the inability to smoke. Watching them splash and laugh, completely present in the moment instead of counting the minutes until my next cigarette break, that was priceless. But perhaps the most profound change was in how I saw myself. For 40 years, smoking had been part of my identity. It was how I coped, how I socialized, how I punctuated my day. Without cigarettes, I had to rediscover who Margaret really was. Turns out, she's more patient than I knew. More resilient. More capable of change, even after decades of habit. She's someone who can take deep breaths, taste subtle flavors, hug her grandchildren without worry. She's someone who keeps promises to herself. 1 year after Emma asked me why I smelled different from other grandmas, I took her out for ice cream. "Do I smell better now?" I asked her, half joking. She looked confused. She'd forgotten all about that comment that had changed my life. She just nodded and went back to her strawberry cone, unaware that her innocent question had given her grandmother years more life. I'm not here to preach or pressure. If you're still smoking, you've heard all the warnings before. Statistics and scary health facts rarely motivate lasting change. I'm living proof of that. Sometimes it's the smaller things, a child's innocent question, the realization that you're missing moments with people you love, the desire to smell like yourself again instead of an ashtray. What I can tell you with absolute certainty is this: it's never too late. After 40 years of smoking, my body still had an amazing capacity to heal. The benefits started within days and continue to unfold even now. If you're considering quitting, know that the journey isn't linear. There will be surprising challenges and unexpected joys. You'll discover strengths you didn't know you had, and you'll face weaknesses you've been masking with smoke for years. Whether you've been smoking for 4 years or 40, your body is waiting to show you what it can do when you give it a chance to heal. Your relationships are waiting to deepen when you're fully present. Your senses are eager to reawaken. And if you've already quit, whether it's been days or decades, I hope my story reminds you of how far you've come. Every cigarette not smoked is a victory. Every deep breath is a gift you've given yourself. Thank you for listening to this grandmother's story. If it resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, the best time to quit was always yesterday, but the second best time is today.